You've got to try my unique Madness-Inducing Cultists in your next ICRPG game. And I say that because I'm really happy with what I landed on and introduced in my last game. It also addressed something that has always bothered me about cultists. Specifically that every time I've run them, they've always turned into these little hooded, stabby buggers that are just meh. I always want them to be a little bit more magical, a little bit more creepy, a little bit cultier. It's just eh. But what I landed on in our last game was just exciting. It felt good. It felt fresh. And I want to share with you the stat block that I used as well as some tweaks. But before I do, I want to set the scene so that you can understand what we went through and how I introduced them and what made these cultists just that much better for me. And specifically, we're playing a game, just a couple one-shots in The Waste is Not Kind, a post-apocalyptic setting or toolkit for ICRPG, and I'm running a homebrew kind of sector of the world. It's kind of, rather than Mad Max, which is what The Waste is Not Kind originally proposed, I'm doing more of a Planet of the Apes Waterworld mashup. And my players, I pulled them in and they are meeting with the Master. They are the leader of Foghaven, one of the towns. It's an old resort that's been converted into a military compound, and the Master only communicates through intercoms. And so they meet him in his office, they talk with him through the intercom, and they know they can't trust him. He's a shady dude as it is, but hey, he's paying, and all he wants them to do is to gather and retrieve a relic that the Order of Black, a local religious group, is using in a ritual that very evening. They're not sure exactly what the relic is, but hey, I want you to get it. It's powerful, I want it. And the player's like, all right. So they get down to the docks, they schmooze their way onto the caravan of barges leaving from Foghaven out to the lake and into the hot marshes. They got some really good rolls, their role playing was good, and they kind of promise, hey, we want to join, we want to be initiates in the order, can we join with you in this evening? We'll forego all of the worldly possessions, all the usual stuff of joining a cult. So they get there on their way, they travel along the lake to the hot marshes where the Order of Black kind of congregates as a special kind of area of the sector. They gather around this ominous black obelisk where the Marsh Mother, one of the leaders of the Order, is gathering with a couple initiates and another member of the Order of Black, Seraphina, who's going to take the oath and become a Marsh Mother herself. And everyone is gathered around on these barges, on the water. The players get up onto the island where the obelisk is and the Marsh Mother, and everything is just kind of quiet and ominous and just odd. And yeah, we're really leaning into that moody vibe that you kind of get in this marshy, cult-like, this is what you want. The Marsh Mother then commences the ritual, the Dark Trade, as they call it, and she pulls out the relic, the feather of the Black Eagle. And this is a kind of a very sacred entity to the order, but it's also a connection to some players that was in the game from a game they were playing in last year, and I thought it would be a fun tie-in, and it was exciting to pull in the Black Eagle feather, or just a reference to the Black Eagle, this legendary creature of the waste. So as soon as the relic appears, the players jump. They didn't waste any time. It pulled out their weapons, took out the Marsh Mother, took out the bodyguard that was standing there, one-shots, used their grit, used their high rolls, their bonuses, everything, just boom, boom, got the black feather, and in just a single round, they had it claimed, and they thought everything was going to go down. And it was going to get crazy, but this is where I was really happy with the cult and the Order of the Black, is they didn't do anything. Rather than rushing in like I would normally do and go stabby, the Order of Black didn't do anything. They just stood on their barges, they gasped at the horror, but immediately started chanting. They didn't make any aggressive advances, they just chanted. And I have them roll Adrenaline and Madness. Now, in The Waste is Not Kind, there's a core mechanic of Adrenaline and Madness. Adrenaline is a kind of growing pool. Everyone starts at 0, and as the game plays, as stressors like emotional or stressors or mental or physical things, you can have your players roll for adrenaline, and then they make a constitution check or a charisma check depending on the type of stressor, and if they fail, they might gain 1 to d4 adrenaline. And this is great because a little bit of adrenaline kind of boosts you up. It lets you roll a little bit higher on grit. It adds to your grit results. And so it's kind of good to have a bit of adrenaline in the game. But you also have to be wary of madness. Madness is when you push yourself too far with adrenaline. Maybe you do something like really horrendous. You watch a player die or almost die or anything, so you can have your players roll for madness. And what they do is they roll a flat d20 against their adrenaline score, whatever their pool is, 1 to 10 or whatever. And if they roll higher than their adrenaline score, nothing happens. They resist the madness. Their mind doesn't break. But if they roll at or below their adrenaline score, they have to roll again a flat d20 on the madness table, and they can get different effects. Things like maybe they get scarred and they can't go below 3 adrenaline, or maybe their legs suddenly stop working because they're just terrified with fright. Their legs stop working, they miss the connection, and they don't get to move again until they recover some adrenaline. Or if they roll really poorly with a nat 1, they could have a heart attack and immediately drop to a dying timer of 1, versus a nat 20, which is, gaining a stat because they just accepted the craziness and it just elevated them to a whole new level. Like, this is the kind of stuff that can happen with madness. What was really fun is, as our players were expecting a big fight that didn't come, but suddenly every round they're rolling adrenaline, they're making checks, they're gaining adrenaline, it's going up, they're rolling madness every single round. They can see that the possibility of rolling on that madness table is growing and growing and growing. A few players start hitting those madness rolls, they start getting effects, they start, one of the players' legs stop working, one player goes into a kind of a fight, not flight mode, they just have to be really aggressive. One of them sets a goal that they would keep gaining adrenaline every round until they have to get back to town. And so this is where I really fell in love with this approach of cultists, and what makes them so unique is they weren't cultists who were going to stabby. They were directly leaning and pushing into this core mechanic of the Waste is Not Kind, which is adrenaline and madness. And even though it wasn't directly attacking their health or their items or anything, it was super threatening for the players, and they had to address it. They knew they couldn't stay for long, and it felt weird. It felt so weird, and the players felt off that they were just going along and chanting and just feeling ominous and bizarre as they were in this weird place dealing with this and slowly going mad, and that felt good. Now, what about specifics? This is something I want you to try in your game. So let me give you the stat block that I ran, and you can use it as is, but you might also take a few suggestions as I've had time to kind of process what went well, what didn't. If you look at this stat block, you have the Order of Black, and I have some stats for the leaders and the brutes and the followers, and so they've got a slightly different range of bonuses to their charisma, as well as some abilities that each of them get. But essentially what I have is that the leader, the Marsh Mother, has this imposing presence, so that when players fail a madness roll, typically, like I explained, you roll a flat d20, and from 11 to 20, they're usually a little bit better. You're taking advantage of the adrenaline, it's kind of pushing you onward, versus the lower half of the table, which ends up being a little bit more detrimental. Ominous presence, imposing presence in this case for the Marsh Mother, just by being in the presence of the leader of the group, you completely remove the second half of the madness table. And now they're only rolling on the detrimental side. Super threatening. And this is a fun way to kind of elevate that this leader is a big deal without having a bunch of magical spells or anything like that. There's also the repelling aura, which I had as another kind of safeguard, that in order to even attack the leader, the Marsh Mother, they have to make a charisma roll. And I mean, oftentimes charisma is one of the lower scores for lower stats for players. So this could be a safety net for the Marsh Mother. But again, it didn't. They made their check and it went through. So then the other one is manipulate. I wanted to keep the cultists and the Order of the Black, to the leaders at least, to be these manipulative enemies. Again, they're not super powerful, but they're experts at taking advantage of their followers and those around them. And so manipulate is simply, instead of attacking themselves, they roll for their charisma against the player's charisma in a contest, and if the leader wins, Marsh Mother gets to take an action as that person. So I didn't get to use this in the game because, again, my Marsh Mother was taken out so quickly, but it was an exciting way. I was excited about the idea of a different way of attacking. Now, the black chant, this is what I've already explained, is that every round the players are making a charisma save, and if they don't, they gain an additional adrenaline, and then they would roll for madness. So it's every round this is happening due to the black chant. In the event of like a nat 1, the adrenaline might be a d4 instead of a 1, or if other things were happening, like I would bump up the adrenaline a little bit, but I wanted there to be this constant pressure and adrenaline building source, which is the black chant. And finally, if you look at the brute, I have the natural form. Now, in the lore of the Order of the Black that I had, it's that there are very few males and mostly females in the order, and so any of the males, they would be the brutes, and they would have this natural form that the Marsh Mother and others could kind of convert them into. It'd be some kind of animal. And in this case, I turned my bodyguard brute a few rounds after the initial kind of confrontation into this big black alligator that attacked for a moment, but then again got killed due to some grit and natural 20s. Just took him out. But I thought about having some way that they would have, you know, a melee attack, something close, 2d6, rather than going for ultimate, so I could have a better average for that damage. Natural armor is on any given hit, you only can take up to maximum 5 damage, so you kind of cut it a little bit because of the armor, just that natural protection. And then lastly, a special attack based off the type of animal that the brute is turned into. In the case of the alligator, it was a kind of a death roll that would do ultimate. In the case of maybe a bear, it was kind of maybe a slam. Maybe a big moose was a ram or an antler attack. You know, you never know. But whatever animal you chose, that would be kind of a way to continually introduce that connection to nature that I wanted the order to have, but still have that ability to maybe have a little bit of damage dealing. But in the end, these cultists just felt good to play. I was really excited how they landed. I was really excited about the mood they were bringing to the game, the tone that they brought, and it just threw my players for a bit of a loop as they didn't attack, and yet the players were attacking. How do you attack someone who's not defending themselves? How do you attack someone who's not fighting back? Are they evil? Are they not? Are they passives? Are they not? Like, what is going on? And it just added to the overall feel, and that's what made these unique cultists so maddening and so much more fun than just a stabby hooded kind of rogue